Welcome to episode 41 of the Ape and Bird NFT show. That is right, the Dirk Nowitzki special for you basketball heads out there. And I have a very, very special guest host today, StellaCat, aka at StellaCat4 on Twitter, an absolute OG in the NFT space, an Avastars Discord mod, very, very entrenched into the space. But particularly why I'm so excited is we had Whale Swoosh joining us last week from Germany. We have StellaCat from Australia. Yes, we have a fellow Aussie who is deep, deep in the space, and his name is not GT Soul, or her name is not Jane from Oshi Gallery. So I'm very, very excited to speak to another class of 2017 in NFTs. StellaCat, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Greg. Thanks for having me. Hi, all you fellow Aussies out there.
Absolutely. And similar to Whale, as if you've not already picked up on the video version, StellaCat is not doxed. So we're going for our second non-doxed person in back-to-back weeks after having, I think, 39 weeks of doxed people. We're definitely got the flavor of the month is non-doxed. So again, welcome to the show, Stella. And just give everyone a little bit of a TLDR of your journey into NFTs. Obviously, they started quite some time ago.
The short version?
The short version is good because we're going to
Yes.
dig into some of the other stuff soon.
Yeah. Okay, well, it basically started with CryptoKitties. And at the time, that was really the main NFT space. And then since then, obviously, the space has grown and grown, and I just can't leave. So I'm still here.
Okay, so CryptoKitties, I do want to dig into CryptoKitties quite a bit because I think, you're probably one of the quote unquote CryptoKitties experts out there that I could probably get a bit of alpha from myself because I think it's an interesting collection. I think it's a collection that's often almost looked upon by many newbies that have come into the space. And I would classify myself still in that class, that sort of 2020, 2021 wave where it's like, oh yeah, CryptoKitties are pretty important and they played but they're sort of irrelevant now. And I'm not sure that that's necessarily the case. So I do want to dig into CryptoKitties. But you're obviously a moderator for Avastars, which was, would I be right in saying it's the first PFP on-chain collection or project by Jimmy?
Yes. So the art itself was actually drawn by artists, quite not part of the NFT space, but they had quite a good backlog of work, and so it was quite innovative the way that Jimmy had the contract done up, in that so they drew each trait separately as a layer, and each trait is in the contract, as an SVG. The SVG code for every single trait is in the contract, and so what it does is each token will then has a list, obviously, of the traits required, and it pulls the SVG data from the contract, and so you can render any token straight from the contract. You get the full SVG code straight out of the contract. So yeah, at the time that blew our minds, and frankly, it's still quite cutting edge tech. So yeah.
So tell us, how did you land this role as Avastar's Discord mod? And you're obviously quite close with Jimmy if you're a moderator there. And I should tell the listeners too, one of the reasons at NFT Fest in November last year we were able to get Jimmy was actually Stella floating the idea on my behalf. So we thank you very much for that, Stella, because Jimmy gave a lot, even though it was a virtual appearance. We had him up on the big screens in the main theater. And I think it was the day after Moonbirds had gone, quote unquote, in chain. And Jimmy was not, was not happy about the wording.
No.
So he and Kevin had a spat essentially on Twitter.
Yeah,
and
I saw that, yes.
our host, Theo, that was interviewing Jimmy. So shout out to Theo, who runs NFT Melbourne. Did a really good interview with Jimmy, and Jimmy just sort of teed off, but Jimmy was great. So thank you for facilitating that.
Jimmy's a very generous and a very smart guy, and an absolute pioneer of this space. Yep, 100%. And really, I guess my connection to Jimmy goes back to, like everything, CryptoKitties. So maybe we should start there, because that kind of leads into Avastars, really, because and part of the on-chain discussion as well, because that really was the purpose of the technology behind Avastars, the way it was developed. Um, so look, I don't know. What do you want me to do? Talk about
Yeah,
CryptoKitties? Start at the beginning?
yeah. Let's dig into it because I think it is fascinating, right? Like a lot of people that maybe haven't done their history. I mean, I'm sure they've heard of CryptoPunks, but again, sort of
Mm,
CryptoKitties get forgot about a little bit. But
mm,
walk us through what it was like in 2017 and early
yep.
2018 when CryptoKitties are sort of popping off, and there's, I could imagine a very, very small subset of people that are actually interested in these things, and there's nowhere near the volume of NFT projects or PFP
Oh
projects
no.
or even art that we see today. So, what was it like in those prehistoric days in 2017 and 18?
Well, it was a completely different world, but in some ways it was also very much the same. So 2017, I read I think it was a Gizmodo article. I'd had no interest in cryptocurrency up until that point, although being, quite technically trained. But then I read an article that said you could breed digital cats on the blockchain, and instantly I was absolutely intrigued. And then from there, like that was it. So anyway, that was CryptoKitties, and it was developed as, as a demonstration of blockchain technology, right? So, in the course of learning how to do it, you would get a wallet, you'd learn about transactions, you'd learn how everything, all the fundamentals worked. Back then it was a lot simpler too. But then there was also there's quite a bit more to CryptoKitties than your average, profile pic drop these days, because each cat has a set of genes, right? And they have a set of visible genes, and then they have a whole range of hidden genes. And this is all, determined by the contract. So you breed two cats together, and again, all facilitated by the contract. And there's a certain probability the more visible genes are more likely to come out in the final kitten. But then, you can get quite rare genes coming out and all sorts of stuff. And then there's other um, variations where two genes will produce a completely new gene. So from the beginning of the CryptoKitties contract, what happened was the traits were released sort of slowly, and they were discoverable. So people would be breeding, two traits to find the first one of this new trait, which could be quite lucrative in terms of money. So that's where, while the new traits were coming out, CryptoKitties was very big. There were a lot of people. Some people were writing bots that were paying ridiculous amounts of ETH to um, automatically breed hundreds or thousands of kitties, as fast as possible to try and hit these new traits early and, get the payout from them. And they did the calculations and all the probability and all this sort of stuff. Um, so, I mean, early on, it was quite a blind tool, because the CryptoKitties contract itself and their website didn't show you the genes. And initially, you're kind of just throwing cats together, hoping, hoping for something. And initially, when I joined, the website kept saying, "Oh, join the Discord," and I was like, for Web 2 at that stage, a community something, whatever, connected to a company website was just like an add-on. It wasn't anything worthwhile. But then, so I went to eventually I didn't go for a while, and then early 2018 I went to the CryptoKitties Discord and discovered that really what Web3, is all about is actually community. And I discovered that there's this community of people here who were all just there for the one purpose, and we're helping each other, and all different types of people, but generally quite tech savvy, and that it was actually critical to your, playing the CryptoKitties game, to be part of the community and to be getting all the extra information from there. So people in the community started developing tools, that would help you read the genes and predict the possibility of breeding cats. And, things started popping up like OpenSea. OpenSea was just like a couple of guys' website for a long time there. Those guys were in the CryptoKitties Discord, and if we had an error with OpenSea, we just messaged the dudes on Discord like they were friends, and it was, so
What
that's
what
what the old days
what
were like.
what year? sorry, not what year, but OpenSea. Do you remember when that actually launched? Was that pre CryptoKitties or
No,
post
no, it
CryptoKitties?
wasn't. It was after because, once CryptoKitties was getting quite big, and, then a few other projects started coming out, then, there was a bit of a need for these other tools. And really, this is where it comes from. Initially, CryptoKitties really needed the community to start developing all these tools. And, I was involved in, some projects. We're trying to develop games based on it and that sort of thing. And then people started developing tools for the wider NFT space. And so really all of this really comes from CryptoKitties. And then that, the main people in that space were Pranked at the time, Jimmy, Nate Alex, uh, Poopy, all those people.
Yep.
And a lot of those people then went on to start their own projects. Like CryptoKitties was just a demonstration of Web3 technology, and in playing it and being part of the community, we identified a lot of ways where it could have been improved. And so that then led on to people developing their own projects. And in particular, having the art on chain became an issue because, we had a lot of cats. I've got 4,500 cats, and I'm not one of the higher holders. There's people with hundreds of thousands, right? And I guess that's the issue with it, why people don't like it, because there's no cap. You can keep breeding them, and but it started to be discussed. What happens if Dapper folds, right? We've got all these cats. What do we do? Now, some of the big players had in their own tools had databases of all the images, so they're like, oh, we could recreate it if we need to, and they've got data, they had the layers and whatnot. But it really led to a bigger desire for people to have the art actually on chain, and that's what led really Jimmy to develop Avastars, because it did all the things that we as CryptoKitty players wanted from our NFTs. It was the drop mechanism and the mint mechanism avoided, FOMO. It was the collection is community curated, they're customizable, they're reusable, they've got extra traits, and everything's on chain. They're all the kinds of things, that we wanted from as CryptoKitties players. So that's actually what really, led Jimmy to develop Avastars. And being, I'm just knowing them and offering to help out, and of course being in Australia, I could cover the graveyard shift,
Yeah.
and being a big fan of Avastars, so I just wanted to help out basically. So that was a long story, but there you go.
No, it's fascinating. There's a lot to unpack there.
Mm.
You mentioned some of these names like Pranksy and Nate Alex and Jimmy and Poopy, and I think I put even in the most respectful way. I think I put in our show notes to you, Stella, that I wanted to discuss this sort of what I call the OG mafia. And I put those names in there: Nate Alex and Jimmy and Poopy, obviously from Doodles, the current project, Pranksy, but also Kai Gani. And
Oh
Kai
yep, Kai.
Gani, I met Kai through the Meebits DAO when I was really starting to scratch an itch in sort of around mid 2021. I had bought a few Meebits because I remember like I was backtracking. I was like, okay, I'm priced out of punks. I'm definitely priced
Yeah,
out of
yep,
autoglyphs.
yeah.
What can I get that's like Lava
What's
Labs? And it
decent?
was
Yeah.
around that May period when obviously they minted for 2.5 ETH. I missed the mint, but I actually ended up picking them up for like, essentially like 0.83. I got a good
Wow.
one. And then I got another one like a few days later for like 1.5. And I've still got those today. I'm just hanging on to them. But I met Kai through Meebits DAO because I just wanted to get closer to people that I knew had been in the space for a while.
Yep.
And so Kai Gani actually ended up being a speaker at NFT Fest Volume 1, which was in September 2021. It was an online event only, about 3,500 registrations. And it was obviously in sort of still peak NFT euphoria, and like Mutant Apes had just dropped and there was a lot going on. World of Women were popping off, all these sort of
Mm.
projects. But talk us through like, because I remember there was a tweet from Jimmy over about, I don't even know, it must be like close to 18 months ago now, where he was essentially saying, the story of these founders like Poopy with Doodles now, and Pranksy and Nate Alex has done his own thing with Chain Faces and a variety of other things, and his message was almost like, use this time in NFTs to develop your circle, because, who knows what comes out of it. And he was pointing to all of these great things that some of these people that they were all kicking around in the CryptoKitties Discord, including yourself, have gone on to do. So, like, yeah, talk us through this sort of like OG mafia, and who else are we missing from the list?
Oh, probably quite a few. Yeah, I know there's a few more people in that group. Oh,
I'm putting you on the spot here, obviously.
yeah. I know there's quite a few crypto people that were on the CryptoKitties team. Rude Moose. But yeah, look, the thing is, it was just so, it's kind of weird because CryptoKitties back then was a microcosm of what the bigger space is today now, but in some ways it was completely different, because this thing we have today of the 10K profile pic drop where everybody mints it out and tries to get the rare ones and then sells them on pumps and dumps, that wasn't even known back then. That wasn't a thing. It was really about the technology, or whatever attracted you about the NFT. And so I think there are a lot more people to come out of that space that actually went on to develop worthwhile projects, whereas now there's a lot of people that just copy and paste the exact same smart contract and change a few variables and pay on someone on Fiverr to make all the layers, and bam, they have a project. And so many people are so familiar with that these days, and they've looked at those contracts, when they see something that had come out of CryptoKitties, something that's a bit more bespoke, they don't even recognize it. But I think really the largest innovation has come from the people that came from that space, to be honest.
Yeah. So I'm thinking of going one or two directions here. I'm going to pick one. Generation Zero. Now, I think I've said this to you in the DMs too. I think I'm heavily influenced maybe by Nate Alex, maybe even Pranksy's put out a tweet in the last year or two. I can't really remember. Definitely Nate. When I think about, like, I've got a historical NFT sitting on my back, left shoulder here in Crypto Arte, which was a 2018 project by Seb, and I've developed a good relationship with Seb, and I just like the art. It's, the floor's nothing spectacular. Maybe it will be one day, but I collected it because I liked it. I liked the story. It's visually showing essentially the history of the Ethereum blockchain through generative art. It wasn't on chain initially, obviously, like autoglyphs, but there were some that were minted sort of pre autoglyphs. But my thesis around CryptoKitties, and I want you to tell me whether I'm right, wrong, or you're just neutral on it, is if CryptoKitties was so important, which we know it was in terms of like just the attention the NFT space gets today, there are over 2 million CryptoKitties when you go on OpenSea, and it's overwhelming. And I think people just don't even go there. But if you filter Generation Zero, there's about 35 or 36,000 Generation Zero CryptoKitties.
Yes.
Long-term thesis, and I know nothing on this show is ever financial advice, and we're not talking about floors pumping or anything like that. But just in terms of holding on to something that is potentially going to have some significant value or some significance in the history of NFTs, as I'm sure there will be plenty of movies and Netflix docos on the origins of NFTs over the coming decades. Are you bullish or bearish on Generation Zero CryptoKitties?
Well, it really depends, because they're not all the same, you see. So within the Gen Zero, there's a range of rarity and traits. So you could consider it a collection in and of itself.
Okay. So walk us through what, in your opinion, I mean, obviously we don't have any visuals to show the audience right now, but are there any particular traits or any sort of rarer ones within that Generation Zero sort of collection that you know of that, at least would get your attention?
Well, look, what you need to do, I think, if you want to look at rarity and traits, you need to actually look up the trait chart, because there's like a flow chart of traits, right? And it's chronological. So they started out with some base traits, and then two of those joined together to create a new one, and then so on and so on. So what happens is the earlier traits are rarer. For example, if the earliest you can get a black or onyx cat is Gen 2, right? Because onyx has to be created by koala and aquamarine, I think. And that's not 100% certainty. And koala and aquamarine are quite rare in Gen 0. So if you go searching for a Gen 0 with koala or aquamarine as its main visible trait, they're going to be towards the top of the top of the spectrum. But if you can breed fresh, virgin Gen 2 onyx cats, then, um, if there is any interest in cats, something like that, would probably be would definitely be more valuable than say Gen Zero cats with quite common traits that towards the end of the flow chart that are not really that popular. It's quite well reflected in the price of the Gen Zero market. So there is a third-party tool called Kitty Helper that will help you really drill down into filtering out the Gen Zeros and gives you, prices and that sort of stuff. So yeah, if you want to look into them, I definitely recommend that. But also do consider the early things like the first year fancies and exclusives, and if you can afford it, a founder.
Yes, I've definitely heard of the founders, and so the tool was called Kitty Helper. Is that like a
Yep.
.com .io or?
Let me just. I
It's always dangerous territory telling
Yes,
listeners to Google
sorry.
something, isn't
Kitty
it?
Helper. Yeah, I see. Back in the day, it's just .co.co. So back in the
.co.
day, it's somebody's, one of the friends from the CryptoKitty community. It just was their website. Um, and it really looks quite similar to the way it always has. But yeah, it's very, very, it gives you a lot of data, in terms of price and sales and history and all sorts of stuff. So definitely recommend that if you want to drill down and look for cats that may be undervalued in the market. Put it that way, because
Great,
that always happens.
great.
But I do have to warn people that the CryptoKitty market, there are still a lot of people with their bots going. So let's say they'll be looking for a rare cat that goes below a certain price, the bot will just automatically buy it, and things like that. So there still is competition. Somebody else in the community created a savior bot that would fight that bot for really low priced cats that people may have accidentally done so that they could get them back. So yeah, that was fun. But yeah, there's a lot of bots active in that area, as there are in every area.
I love that. Okay, well, we've definitely got to do our homework. CryptoKitties definitely interest me. I think they're in it. Just the origins and the stories that you hear are just so fascinating. I think that a lot of the reason, like you said, that the projects and we're all here today is because of some of those origin stories. What I want to talk about before we get off CryptoKitties is obviously CryptoPunks minted, I think, a couple of months before CryptoKitties started, maybe in like July 2021. And then Kitties was sort of maybe around November 2021, I think. Sorry, not 2021. What am I talking about? 2017. So
17,
July
yep.
2017 for CryptoPunks, and then CryptoKitties around November 2017, and then obviously sort of all the way through into 2018, and then the onset after that. But had punks come across your radar at the time, or were people
Yes.
talking about CryptoPunks in that CryptoKitties Discord?
Yes. Yeah, so this is how it was kind of different at the time. CryptoKitties was everything, right? It was everything. And all these little projects outside that were kind of not, just they didn't really generate that much interest back then, obviously. Now, I guess this comes into where I was a kind of rebel in the space. When I came into the CryptoKitty space, really, most people were quite technical, into bots and, into making money out of it and that sort of stuff. But I just came into it, and I'm a collector. I collect physical toys, figures, Hot Wheels, that sort of thing. So for me, collecting NFTs is just a very natural fit. And, I would buy and breed cats just on the base of their physical beauty. Right? I just wanted nice things in my wallet. Whereas other people would pay a lot of money for a really ugly cat that was rare. So when it came to things like punks, I really wasn't that, enthused with their visual appeal. So I was just like, yeah, no thanks. So I just kept collecting and have 4,500 cats. But yeah, and still to this day, I, you know, I, I buy what I like. I may perceive that some things may go up in value, but if I really don't like them, I just won't buy them.
Okay.
So,
So what about when autoglyphs came in 2019? Were you still sort of poking around in NFT land, or had things gone into a little bit of a lull in that sort of 2019 period? Because it was obviously deep in a crypto bear market as well.
oh, I don't really pay much attention to those because I'm here. I can't leave the space even if I wanted to because I'm a collector. But so yeah, bear markets, bull markets, whatever, I'm not going to leave. So um, I was very enthused with the tech. I loved the tech, of generative art, but I just again really didn't appeal to me. I found it boring. So, I was focused on breeding cats and not even really breeding the cats that everybody was going for to make money off. I was just breeding cats that I liked the look of. So that's really what makes me quite different from most people in this space. But yes, I'm a genuine collector, and I'm really going to actually keep most of my NFTs.
I think actually it's such an important way though to not burn out and to almost enjoy the space. Like I got lucky in 2021 with a couple of NFTs that I bought early, and I honestly had no idea what they were going to do. But I bought them out of curiosity. And when I tell this story to some people, they sort of like roll their eyes and like, oh yeah, sure, you know what I was going to do, blah 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 blah. And I was like, no, actually, I didn't. I just bought it because I liked it, and I bought it because I thought that, I had a Bored Ape pretty early on. I didn't mint one, but I bought one off OpenSea for like 0.36 in May 2021. And that was obviously a ride of a lifetime. I don't have it anymore. I'd like to get it back one day because it was just
Mm,
almost for sentimental value. But writing on the bathroom wall and using essentially my first decentralized app being the Bored Ape website, and I've told this story on the show before, was an unlock in my brain where I was like, this is really cool. Like I didn't need my email address or
mhm,
password like that we've needed for 20 years of internet usage. It's like I've got this token in my wallet and I can do this thing on the internet that someone without the token can't do. And I just thought that was like interesting, right? So I was leading with curiosity at first, and there's a lot of NFTs in my wallet, in particular. The two that are behind me on the wall here that I've printed physical canvases that I couldn't give a rat's ass about the floor. It's more I just like the art and I like the NFT artist. So I think actually leading with curiosity and buying what you like. For some listeners, they're probably tuning out now, going, "Yeah, I just want to know what's going to 5 or 10x." But ultimately, a lot of my stuff did 5 or 10x just for the sheer fact that I really liked it. And the same was with cyber brokers, which we're going to get onto in a second.
mm,
All right, I do want to stay on the art theme for a second, Stella, because earlier this morning we had a Sotheby's auction for Dmitry Cherniak's the Goose from
mm,
the iconic Ringers collection. Now, this was advertised as probably going to be going for around 200, I shouldn't say 200, 2 to 3 million USD. It went for 5.4 plus fees. So Sotheby's fees as well on top of that. I think it's pushed it up somewhere in the vicinity of 6 US for this particular NFT in a crypto Twitter environment where we keep hearing about NFTs are dead, and we have just had a $5.4 million sale for one JPEG. Is that ridiculous to you, or did you expect this, or it's just like, hey, this is the wild, wild west, whatever?
Oh, it's pretty normal. I mean, if you're paying 2 to 3 million for a piece of art, what's 5 or 6? Really. But um, the whales are always active in one way or another. NFTs are never dead, and if a whale sees value in something, they will buy it. And I've seen that over the years with a lot of different things. And yeah, it's I just don't think that it. depends on whether it's a bear or a bull. Those high value whale sales sort of can happen at any time. I think what's interesting though is the introduction of you know, more big business and non-Web3 companies, you know, and kind of what you alluded to before about your experience, you know, about not having to log into a website. You know, Web3 has a lot of potential for something like solving the single sign-on across the internet issue. You know, it does it superbly, you know, and I think companies like, you know, the larger companies can definitely see that there's value and benefit in it. Um, so so yeah, I think it's a great thing.
Absolutely. So let's talk about some brands. Again, you know, you've been collecting NFTs. You're very deep in what I would call sort of the NFT and ethos and collector ethos. And like you said, you know, bear or bull, you're here for good. When you start to see some of these brands like Nike with their dot swoosh, like Louis Vuitton, like Mercedes, like Porsche, many of these other sneaker brands, like essentially well established, world recognizable brands that are starting to dip their toe in the water with Web3 and NFTs. I mean, a lot of them are taking very different methodologies of coming into Web3, but overall, does it excite you, or does it sort of upset you that these brands are coming in and you sort of like, go away, get out of our sort of, you know, we created this new world over here by ourselves, you know, you're not invited to the party? Where do you sit on that spectrum?
Yes, it's a very controversial issue, and I have a lot of close friends that have strong opinions either way. Um, I myself, I tend to be able to live in both worlds, and I do. I'm a very strong supporter of decentralization and all of that, what it means and what it stands for us having autonomy. But on the other hand, big brands coming in is one, inevitable, two, necessary if it's going to go mainstream, and three, it's not all the same. You know, like people say, oh, crypto's a scam or NFTs are dead. That's a big generalization. It's kind of like saying, oh, there are scams on the internet, so the whole internet is a scam. Well, that's not the case, and it's the same for Web3. You know, there are scams, but that doesn't mean everything is. And so I think what we need to do is, instead of take an all or nothing approach, is look at each case on its own merits and push back on brands that are just exploiting us, and welcome brands that are really embracing the tech and, you know, looking at what it can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of sort of, will it, you know, will NFTs, will Web3, we always talk about, you know, will it hit mainstream adoption? What I'm very interested in your thoughts, Stella, is I had another guest on this show a few weeks ago from Canada. His name's Ben Roy, and he's friends with Claire Silver, the AI
Yep.
artist, or one of the more notable AI artists. And Ben and I were chopping it up a little bit about sort of essentially like crypto and NFT subcultures, right? Like almost like this soap opera that we live in on crypto Twitter every day. And like, to me, and I'm obviously down the rabbit hole on it, but you know, when I'm interviewing people like Josie Bellini, and we do have to get onto cyber brokers soon because I think, you know, you're a fangirl, I'm a fanboy of Josie and cyber brokers. So
Oh yeah.
we definitely need to talk about, you know, the brokers and Josie. But when I think about even Trevor Jones, and I've done recently an article with Coldy, and what I would sort of group those three artists in particular is they sort of started creating art, visual, like almost a visualization of these crypto characters, you know, whether it was Vitalik or, you know, of Warren Buffett, you know, flooded Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever. It was essentially like visualizing what is essentially everything's, you know, written in code. And then these artists come along and they're sort of like bringing it to life through art and sort of creating this like culture with it. And I find that fascinating. In particular, like I grew up in the sort of the hip hop era where, you know, I remember seeing like rap culture and hip hop just permeate throughout mainstream culture, and, you know, had a strong affiliation to basketball, which I was playing a lot. And it almost like overtook the 90s and the early 2000s. And I sort of sit back sometimes and I'm like, NFTs and sort of this little pocket of subculture with like NFT Twitter and crypto culture, is that going to have a cut through moment, or are we just going to be stuck in our own little bubble? Given that you've been stuck in this bubble for 5 or 6 years, do you have an opinion either way on that question?
Yeah, look, I think what will happen is it, it, our subculture will continue to grow, but mainstream adoption will be in the form that most people just won't know what it is or what they're using. A prime example of the Reddit avatars, right? So Reddit users have these NFT avatars, and most of them have no idea that they're using Web3 technology in that. And Reddit's made it quite easy to use and everything. Nobody really knows they're using a wallet, and so that's the way it's going to go. It's just going to permeate society, but most people won't know they're using it. But us degens over here, we'll still know, and we'll still be doing our own crazy meme based stuff. I don't think meme culture is going to permeate the entire world, but yeah, it probably will have as big a place as hip hop.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating question to like sort of stew over at least because yeah, it's sort of like when I think of internet culture, like internet culture is culture, right? Like we live our
Mm.
lives more and more digitally. And before we jump off this topic, because I like the Reddit example, why do you think that the word NFT or even just Web3, why do you think people are so allergic or have this sort of like allergic reaction to it when they hear it? Because I think back and I'm like, okay, when Twitter first came out or Facebook or all these other platforms, yes, they were fudded to a degree. And it's obviously a different scenario because people are investing with Web3 stuff. They're actually spending dollars to buy some of these things. Whereas, Web2 platforms, you're essentially just giving away your data or your email address. But I wonder why people are so hesitant. Like, do you think it's just a combination of headlines in mainstream media saying, there was a hack, there's scams, there's this, that, and the other, and then maybe the flip side is like the people that have heard that someone's sold this monkey JPEG for $200,000 just get incredibly jealous and sort of a little bit resentful that someone has essentially been able to get a couple of years salary for selling a JPEG. Like, what are your thoughts there?
Well, there's always a little bit of that, but I think mostly it actually boils down to the fact that normal people, normal people, their exposure to this is usually some sort of scammy bot that's tagging them on social media and trying to take their money. If they're not in a Web3 community, they don't really have any exposure to the real Web3. So that's their only exposure. So that's what they assume. And it's like I said before, that people say there's scams on the internet. You wouldn't avoid the whole internet, but they don't understand that there's a whole lot more out there to Web3 than what they're interacting with, which is the scammers. So, and I think the problem there is, as I said, if it just becomes ubiquitous with people not knowing, then that's not going to really change that much. But big brands like Sotheby's selling art for millions of dollars, that can change it, because like you said, people are spending money, but in fact, that shows that people are far more motivated to engage with it if they're actually spending money.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point you raised too around if you're not in the community or your first interaction with NFTs. Like I can actually remember in the height of the bull run in sort of 2021 and early 2022, there was times I went to Instagram and I was just on Instagram stories, and I don't do really much on my NFT side of things on my Instagram platform. And, there was some ads being served essentially that would be saying, like the next Bored Ape or the next blah, blah, blah. And I knew they were like scams from the get go, right? Because I'd been toying around and had enough contacts, at least in Discords and Twitter, to, if I needed to get someone's second opinion, I could. And I can see how easily that stuff happens. And I think maybe my perception of NFTs has been skewed a little bit just because I've lived and breathed it for essentially 2.5 years now. And so you do get a little bit better of a radar of know what to look out for. So I think that is a really, really good point, and something that needs to be solved, but it's a difficult problem. Okay, let's get on want to talk quickly about life as a Discord moderator, because my perception, knowing a few other Discord moderators in various communities, would be it could be hell sometimes. How have you stuck at it for this long?
Well, look, to be honest, I don't do much of it anymore. I still list myself as an Avastars mod because I love them. I love, I'm a big supporter of that project, and I try to drop in at night whenever I can. But look, I don't mind it. I like, being able to manage spaces. I used to sort of informally mod Minecraft servers when I would play with my nephew. So, managing a group of 8-year-old boys is, once you've done that, you can do anything. But, in the Web3 world, there are a lot of, there's a wide variation between Discord servers, right? Some are really, really well run and managed and professional, and then some aren't, and then there's all the ones in between. So your experience is really going to come down to how well it's managed. And a mod's job is there to monitor things, right? So if you see some sort of argy-bargy, no matter what it is, somebody fudding unnecessarily, or two people fighting, or somebody getting abuse or whatever, it's your job to calm that down, and people that don't have their Discord set up where that's happening and the right mods and people to do that, well, then their Discord, their project's going to suffer as a result. So, mods are important.
Okay. In terms of Avastars, have you had any dicey moments where you've sort of woken up to text messages and you've been hacked or anything like that? Or have you guys been able to, reasonably stay safe?
Oh, the Avastars Discord's always been very, very well managed. I mean, it was there before, the explosion of hackers and everything like that. And I don't think we've really had any major incidents at all. Obviously, there was a swathe of bots, and we had to upgrade our tools and onboarding and verification mechanisms, as every professional Discord has had to. And yeah, I've been in modding in some other Discords where there's been some crazy stuff happen. But yeah, look, I would definitely recommend everybody follow Plumferno on Twitter for Discord security advice.
Twitter handle
Plumferno.
Plumferno.
Ferno.
Ferno.
That's it. Yep.
Okay, shout out to Plumferno for all your Discord alpha. All right, let's segue to a passion project of both of ours, cyber brokers. I found out about cyber brokers because of Jimmy. I think he put out a tweet. I didn't own any Josie artwork at the time, but I think it was maybe around January 2022. And it was something like, we like the brokers or this, that, or the other. And then I saw a few previews and I was like, I just instantly love that art. And I hadn't seen all of them, obviously, at this point. So I followed Josie. I got in the Discord relatively early. And then I loved the way that Josie did just almost like a stealth allow list, right? She sort of said at one point, was like, okay, if you've been following me on Twitter or you've been in Discord up until this point, essentially you've got an allow list. If you own some of my art previously, you've got an allow list for multiple spots. I ended up getting, I think, 3 or 4 spots, and I still hold on to most of those today. I've got a couple of great ones that I really like, but they're not even in the league of the one that you have with your holo. Talk us through, how many did you mint, Stella? It was Cyber Brokers, and how did you get the holo again? You bought that off secondary, is that correct?
Yes, I did. Yes, I minted 3.
Yep.
And yeah, then I just started, buying and selling on secondary. And then when I saw the holo come up for sale, I saw, because I'd seen the other 2 around in, what was coming out. And once I saw the 3, I knew that was a full set, that there would be no more in that set. And so being 3, that it would be rare. But also when I saw the one, I have Alcove Magnetic, and her hairstyle and the colors and everything, I mean, she's so beautiful. So yeah, I just had to buy it. And, I still think it was a bargain. So yeah, I mean, she's stunning.
Yeah, I think Cyber Brokers is up there. Obviously everything is subjective when you're giving your own opinion around art, but when you see the level of depth, and then even digging into the metadata, right, of what cyber brokers are about and all the different layerings, and obviously being on chain as well, following in Jimmy's footsteps. But I also believe when I interviewed Josie a few months ago for Cointelegraph, she was actually saying that she was going to be the artist for Avastars, but I think she might have been pregnant at the time, or there was a few things happening in her life, and Jimmy obviously like didn't want to wait too long. But those two are good friends. But there could have been a scenario where Josie was actually the artist for Avastars.
And that would have been amazing. Yep. Yeah, that would have been awesome. But I mean, obviously, Josie Bellini art on chain, that's a no-brainer, and then just on its own, it would have been a no-brainer. But then, as you say, you look at the layering, all you have to do is look at the trait categories in OpenSea. You look at the species and the talents, and you see how there's a hierarchy. And just looking at that hierarchy, it tells you a lot about the world and the law. Because it starts with a creator, and then you've got the two architects of the world, fact and faith. The opposing ideologies, and then under them you've got the three hollows, which are messengers, and you've got the politicians and the AI cats and all this sort of stuff. I mean, there's just so much in it, and now they're going to be piloting their own mechs, so it's been a lot of fun. Really well designed project. They've made it so that every level of participation is possible in all of the tasks. I'm a busy person. I don't have time to be hanging out in Discord reading stuff, or, doing, spreadsheets with puzzles and things like that. But what they've just put so much thought into setting everything up so that people who want to do that can, and people who can't are still able to participate. It's just really well done.
Yeah, I remember actually it was what were the parts called for the mechs? There was a few initial there was like lupus arms or something
Yep.
like that. There was in those early quests, and essentially anyone could get involved with the quests, whether you're a broker's holder or not. And essentially, you got airdropped one of those lupus arms, which essentially had a pretty decent floor price at 1.2. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think Josie's been very thoughtful in how she's going to sort of expand the ecosystem. So I'm very very bullish on cyber brokers. I think it's a lot of fun. I think they've added a lot of value. My probably personal favorite, I have a cyber broker called Heaven Dagger. I regularly get offers
Ooh.
on it. That is not generally much above floor offers, but I just love it. It's an Heaven Dagger is an assassin, and she's just badass. So I don't know if I want to let go of Heaven Dagger anytime soon, but certainly I love the fact that Josie's obviously paid homage to so many NFT collections and art that have paved the way. Even marketplaces, like I have a cyber broker that has the super rare. He's wearing a super rare T-shirt and has the super rare balloon, and there's
Degen.
homage. Yeah, there's homage there to plasma bears and to
Yep.
crypto kitties
I've
and
got a
to chromie
degen with a
squiggles.
crypto kitty floaty. So
I love that. Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that. So yeah, shout out to cyber brokers. I think it's a fantastic project with a lot of depth. All right. Let's transition into you've mentioned before, Stella, that you buy what you like. How do you keep sane when everyone else, when you come on Twitter, and maybe you've just got a great curated Twitter feed, but you see like, I don't know, Nakamigos or like whatever the Pepe coin, whatever the narrative of the time is, and you see people going, I just, flipped 10x or 5x, or I did this, I did that. And here you are, almost like just immune to the noise, buying what you like. How does that work?
well, I mean, I'm not immune to the noise. I just don't really. I guess I'm not influenced by it. I actually have Peppy Coin and Turbo Coin, and I bought some of the Turbo little AI frogs because they were so cute. I like having some stuff because it's part of the history, part of the story. I've got a lot of. I mean, honestly, just look through my wallet. It kind of tells a story in and of itself. But yeah, I think it actually relates back to my history as a physical toy collector. I've been doing that for decades, and I've got rooms full of physical toys. I've got thousands of Hot Wheels, for example. Um, and so I've already developed that, I mean, in the toy collecting world, you develop the ability to recognize rares and exclusives. Um, but then, so it just really applies to NFTs.
Okay. All right. As we wrap up, I do want to ask you a couple of little rapid fire ones, and I thank you
Yes.
for being a guest on today's show because I've learned quite a bit around CryptoKitties and just the origins of it all back in the halcyon days of 2017, 2018. The favorite, and maybe your answer is going to be your Holo Cyberbroker here, but your favorite NFT in your wallet. I think this would get extra bonus points if you named one of the 4,500 CryptoKitties that you have. But favorite NFT in general in your wallet.
Oh, that I don't have one. I actually strain my brain scrolling through my wallet, trying to narrow down my favorites below 100. One day I'll put together an on cyber gallery which has all of my favorites. So I'll post the link on Twitter and everybody can see. But honestly, I love so many of them. I've got gifts. I've got some customs. People. I've got Christy Glass has done one of my dog. The New Here customs. Lots of. I mean, obviously, my Hollow Girl is definitely one of those. But just I guess weird stuff. But yeah, I really don't have a favorite. It's a thing other people do. I actually don't. So yeah, that's a problem.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a different question. Any NFTs currently on your shopping list, on your NFT shopping list? Are there any particular NFTs that you're sort of having a look at regularly, just tracking where they're at floor wise and that you're ready to pounce?
Um, well, at the moment, that would have to be Cyberbroker mech parts. Mainly because I've got a few more I want to create. So again, it's got absolutely nothing to do with money. It's got to do with the fact that I've made 15 mechs so far, but I've got at least another 3 I want to create, and there's some specific parts that I'm looking for. So I keep an eye on that market, and if some come up cheap, then yep, I'll nab them.
Love that. I have one last question for you. If you were recommending a PFP that's not an MFer, this is a very specific question. It's actually for someone that asked me in the office that I'm working at a couple of days a week. And he said yesterday, I want a PFP. I don't want an MFer because my colleagues have an MFer. And I don't want something that's currently in the hype cycle. So I want something though is like, that's known but not overly known, not an MFR and not in the hype cycle. In your opinion, what would that recommendation be?
Well, look, I thought about this and I've got a bit of a list because, it really depends on the person. And nothing I like is in the hype cycle. Um, but they're actually all genuine projects with really genuine and great communities. So obviously Avastars is one. You can get a great profile pic that also has spare traits that you can, create other stuff with. The old 8-bit budgies are great community, as well as Pixie Jars, another great community, great profile pics. The Fame Lady Squad, have you recently seen that they've rewrapped? The community took hold of the contract and rewrapped them to a new contract. Great community there. Fly Frogs, On-Chain Chain is also a wearable. And Code Lawless, the team that Ponderware created Mooncats, are doing some interesting on-chain stuff at the moment. So yeah, have a look at all of those. And again, really good, safe, welcoming communities. And I think that's what's important.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for being very considerate. There's a whole raft of options there as I will go back to my colleague in the office. All right, as we wrap up, just our regular disclaimer, nothing on today's show has been financial advice. It never is and never will be. It is for entertainment and informational purposes only. A couple of quick little plugs here, particularly if you're in Melbourne. Australian Blockchain Week is coming up in Sydney and Melbourne, and I think there's a day in Brisbane. You can go to blockchainweek.com.au for all the details there. We are running an NFT treasure hunt, and actually this probably would have helped you, Stella, when unfortunately you got your holo hacked or stolen at one point. Fortunately, you got it back. We were talking about this off air before, but we're running what's called an NFT treasure hunt in conjunction with Chainalysis on Tuesday, the 27th of June at Upside, which is in Cremorne in Melbourne. You will be essentially playing the role of NFT detective using Chainalysis tooling to sort of backtrack where an NFT has gone after it's stolen or hacked. So if you're interested in that event, it's a free event with food and drink. You're going to learn a lot. There'll be sort of like breakout groups and prizes with that one. So a very practical hands-on workshop. You can go to blockchainweek.com.au to register for free on that one. And to anyone that is coming to the Coinbase Base Layer 2 event in Melbourne next Wednesday, the 21st of June, we'll see you there at Upside. Please do come and say hello. I think that's going to be a pretty interesting event. Number of representatives from Coinbase flying in for that event. So, Stella, with that out of the way, I wanted to thank you again for taking a trip down memory lane with NFTs and sort of educating us all on what it was like back in those days of 2017 and 2018.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Absolutely. We'll have to do a round two at some point when Steve, my co-host, is back because he's been in crypto for a while, but I think he got into NFTs round about the same time as me. But he's got his own NFT project that he's been holding up pretty well, and it's based on a sporting community there with NFTs. So it'd be interesting to have a three-way chat with you in the future with Steve. And I thank you once again, listeners. Thank you so much for joining us today. We will be back next week for episode 42. And until then, we'll see you next time.